The war had lasted 12 long years and everyone was tired of fighting. The Keth Collective was a powerful empire that controlled 300 worlds across the galaxy, and they had been attacking human colonies for over a decade. Millions had died on both sides and the destruction seemed endless. Then one day everything changed when the Keth sent an unexpected message to Earth. They wanted peace. Commander Daniel Morris stood in the observation room of Earth Defense Station Alpha, watching the alien ship approach. The Keth vessel was beautiful in a strange way, with smooth curves and purple lights that pulsed along its surface. He had fought against these creatures for years and now they wanted to talk about ending the war. Something felt wrong about this whole situation. Lieutenant Sophie Grant walked up beside him holding a data pad. She was young but smart and Daniel trusted her judgment. The Keth are requesting a formal peace treaty signing at Station Meridian, she said. That place is neutral ground where different alien species meet to negotiate. Daniel nodded slowly, but his instincts were screaming that this was too easy. After 12 years of brutal combat, why would the Keth suddenly want peace now? He ordered Sophie to get Director Helen Price on a secure communication line and to pull up all historical data about previous Keth peace treaties. Within a few hours, the intelligence reports showed a disturbing pattern. The Keth had signed 7 major peace agreements in the past 200 years, and 5 of those treaties ended with the complete destruction of their opponents within months. They would sign peace deals to make their enemies lower their defenses and then attack with massive force when no one expected it. Director Helen Price appeared on the holographic screen in front of Daniel. She was an older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "You see the pattern too," she said without waiting for him to speak. Daniel confirmed what they both knew. "This peace offer is a trap," he said. "The question is, what should we do about it?" Helen smiled slightly and said they would accept the invitation but prepare for war at the same time. The plan started taking shape quickly. Humanity would send diplomats to Station Meridian as the Keth requested and act like they believed the peace offer was genuine. Captain Paul Henderson would lead the diplomatic team because he was a veteran with decades of combat experience and nerves like steel. Commander Lisa Freeman would be his second in command because she specialized in alien languages and had studied Keth psychology for years. They would smile and shake hands and sign whatever treaty the Keth put in front of them. But behind the scenes, the real preparation would happen. Admiral Kevin Blake commanded the Third Fleet, and he began moving warships into position throughout the sector. On the surface, it looked like normal patrol rotations, but in reality, Blake was setting up a defensive network that could respond within minutes if the Keth showed their true intentions. Every ship was placed with mathematical precision, and every captain knew exactly what to do when the trap was sprung. Dr. Nicole Wade ran the tactical analysis division, and she worked day and night, with her team studying every detail of the Keth proposal. They ran computer simulations and analyzed fleet movements and looked for anything suspicious. One afternoon, Nicole called Daniel to the war room with an urgent discovery. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a star chart. "The Keth are demanding that all human military ships stay at least 15 light-years away from Station Meridian during the negotiations. They claim it is for security reasons." Daniel leaned forward, studying the map. "That distance would put our nearest reinforcements over an hour away, even at maximum speed," he said. "Exactly," Nicole replied. "And there is more." She brought up another display showing shipping routes. Keth merchant traffic through this sector has increased by 40% in the last month. These are not normal cargo routes. Sophie zoomed in on the data and said they are positioning military assets. Those merchant ships are probably carrying troops and weapons. The pieces were falling into place like a puzzle. The Keth were not just planning a trap at the peace conference. They were preparing for a full-scale invasion of human space. The treaty signing was meant to distract everyone while their forces moved into attack positions. It was clever, and it would have worked against a less paranoid species. But humans had been fighting wars against each other for thousands of years before they ever went to space. They knew every trick and every deception that existed. Daniel contacted Helen again and said they needed to brief the Security Council immediately. The emergency meeting lasted 6 hours with President Andrew Cross and the other council members debating what to do. Some argued they should refuse to attend the peace talks at all. Others wanted to expose the Keth plot publicly and shame them in front of the other alien species. But Daniel had a different idea. "We go to the signing," he said firmly. "We send our diplomats and smile for the cameras and act like we suspect nothing. Meanwhile, we set our own trap." Helen nodded in agreement. The Keth think they are the only ones clever enough to plan an ambush, she said. Let us show them what human strategy really looks like. The vote was unanimous and Operation Counterstrike was officially approved. Over the next 2 weeks, humanity prepared on 2 levels. Publicly, Captain Paul Henderson and his team practiced their diplomatic roles. They studied Keth customs and learned the proper greeting rituals and wrote speeches about lasting peace and cooperation between species. They rehearsed everything until it looked completely natural and convincing. Privately, the military moved into position like pieces on a chessboard. Admiral Blake's 3rd Fleet was joined by ships from the 2nd and 5th Fleets. Nearly 400 human warships took up hidden positions in neighboring star systems. The flagship was called the EDS Valiant, and it carried enough weapons to destroy a small planet. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Scott was the chief engineer, and he developed a special jamming system that could disrupt Keth communications across an entire sector. If fighting started, the enemy would not be able to coordinate their forces. Major Claire Phillips led a special operations team called Ghost Squad. They would travel secretly to Station Meridian ahead of the diplomats to do reconnaissance and sabotage if needed. Claire's team had never failed a mission, and they were experts at working behind enemy lines. Every member of Ghost Squad was a veteran of the most dangerous operations humanity had ever conducted. As the date of the treaty signing approached, both sides moved their pieces into final positions. The Keth were confident their plan would work. They saw only what they expected to see, which was a naive human delegation walking into their trap. They did not see the patient eyes watching their every move. They did not see the calculations being made or the countermeasures being prepared. They did not understand that humanity had survived 10,000 years of warfare by being suspicious of everything and everyone. On Earth, Daniel Morris stood in the observation deck one last time before the mission began. The Keth diplomatic ship had departed to return home and prepare for the ceremony. Sophie approached with the final reports. All teams are in position, she said quietly. Ghost Squad confirms that Keth military vessels are gathering near Station Meridian, just outside normal sensor range. They are trying to hide, but our deep space scanners picked them up. Daniel allowed himself a grim smile. Perfect, he said. They think they are being clever. Sophie cautioned him that there was still risk involved. If we have calculated wrong, she said, if this is not actually a trap, we could start a war that does not need to happen. Daniel knew she was right, but every piece of evidence pointed in the same direction. The Keth were not seeking peace. They were seeking advantage. He turned to face Sophie directly. Humanity spent centuries fighting among ourselves, he said. We learned every dirty trick and every deception and every way to gain an edge in battle. The Keth think we are young and foolish because we only went to space 200 years ago. They are about to learn that we are experienced and paranoid. When do we tell Captain Henderson about the backup plan, Sophie asked. He already knows, Daniel replied. Paul volunteered for this mission knowing exactly what might happen. Far across the galaxy in a Keth command ship, High Admiral Zekthor reviewed his plans with satisfaction. The humans were sending their diplomats as requested. Their fleets were staying at the agreed distance. Everything was proceeding perfectly. Soon, he said to his officers, the human resistance will crumble. Their worlds will be isolated. And the Keth Collective will add another species to our empire. The officers around him made clicking sounds with their mandibles, showing their excitement and anticipation. What Zekthor did not know was that Admiral Blake was having a very different conversation with his fleet commanders. Remember, he said over the secure channel, we only fire if they fire first. But if they do, we hit them with everything we have. No mercy and no hesitation. We end this in minutes, not hours. The countdown had begun. 3 days until the treaty signing at Station Meridian. 3 days until the trap would be sprung. The only question remaining was who would end up caught in it. Station Meridian floated in the darkness of space like a massive steel flower, with 12 docking arms extending from the central hub. The station had been built 300 years ago by the Galactic Council as a neutral place where different species could meet and negotiate. It was supposed to be safe ground where no one would dare start a fight. Captain Paul Henderson's shuttle approached slowly, following the exact flight path that Keth Traffic Control had provided. Commander Lisa Freeman sat beside Paul, reviewing the ceremony details one last time. The Keth High Chancellor will arrive in 2 hours, she said. Both sides will meet in the Grand Chamber with their full teams, and the signing happens at sunset according to station time. Paul nodded, but his face showed no emotion. He was 53 years old and had seen more combat than most soldiers experienced in 3 lifetimes. This diplomatic mission was supposed to be his last assignment before retirement, but it might end up being his last mission in a completely different way. "Any word from Ghost Squad?" Paul asked quietly. Lisa checked her encrypted datapad, which looked like normal diplomatic equipment, but contained military-grade communication systems. "Major Phillips reports they are in position," she said. "The Keth have been moving troops into the lower levels of the station. At least 3 companies and maybe more." Paul's jaw tightened because diplomatic stations did not need ground troops. The Keth were not even trying to hide their real intentions anymore. "Admiral Blake confirms the fleet is ready," Lisa added. "They are waiting for our signal." The shuttle docked smoothly and Paul's team of 20 diplomats and support staff walked out into the gleaming corridors. Waiting to greet them was Ambassador Vrenkal, who was a snake-like alien called a Cillian. He served as the station's official mediator. "Welcome, Captain Henderson," the ambassador said through his translator device. "The Galactic Council is honored to host this historic peace agreement." "The honor is ours," Paul replied, following the diplomatic script perfectly. "Humanity desires nothing more than peace with our Keth neighbors." As they walked through the station toward their assigned quarters, Paul's trained eyes caught details that others might miss. Security cameras had been moved from their normal positions. Several corridors had new energy barriers installed that had not been there before. The station staff seemed nervous and avoided making eye contact with the human delegation. Once inside their secure quarters, the polite facade dropped immediately. "They have compromised the station," Paul said bluntly. "The Keth have been here long enough to take control of key systems." Lisa activated a jamming field that would prevent any electronic surveillance, and then projected holographic images in the air. The footage showed Keth soldiers in full combat armor moving through maintenance tunnels. Ships that were supposed to be civilian transports opened their cargo bays to reveal military weapons and equipment. Station security personnel were being quietly detained or replaced with Keth operatives. "They are planning to seal the station," Lisa explained. "Once the treaty is signed, or maybe even during the ceremony, they will lock down all the exits. No one leaves. Then their main fleet jumps in and they use us as hostages while they launch their invasion of human space." Lieutenant Nathan Price was the head of security for the diplomatic team, and he spoke up. "Sir, we can extract right now," he said. "Get our people out before they spring the trap." Paul shook his head firmly. "That is exactly what we will not do," he said. "If we run, they will know we discovered their plan. They will adjust and hit us somewhere else when we are not ready. No, we stick to the mission." He turned to Lisa and told her to send the confirmation code to Admiral Blake. "Operation Counterstrike is approved and active." Across the station in a hidden maintenance bay, Major Claire Phillips received the same message. Her Ghost Squad had spent the past week mapping every corridor and room in Station Meridian while identifying Keth troop positions and planting their own surprises. Throughout the structure, "Time to earn our pay," Claire said to her. Team of 12 special operators. Each one was a veteran of humanity's most dangerous missions. "Remember, we do not start the fight, but when it starts, we make sure it ends quickly." Sergeant Ben Carter checked his weapon systems. The plasma rifle was disguised as a standard toolkit, but could punch through combat armor at 50 meters. "Engineering says they can lock down the Keth in the lower levels when we give the word," he reported. "Good," Claire replied. "What about the station's defense grid?" "We have access," confirmed Specialist Megan Ross, who was their technology expert. "The Keth thought they controlled the automated defense systems, but we installed a backdoor into the computer network. When the shooting starts, those automated turrets will have new targeting priorities." Claire smiled coldly. "The Keth are about to learn an important lesson about humans," she said. "We are really good at hacking things." Meanwhile, 70 light-years away, Admiral Kevin Blake stood on the bridge of the EDS Valiant, watching the holographic display that showed the deployment of his forces. 387 warships representing the finest vessels in Earth's defense fleet waited in carefully calculated positions. Jump calculations are locked and reported Captain Julia Sanders, who was his tactical officer. "We can be at Station Meridian in 90 seconds once we get the signal." Blake studied the tactical display with intense focus. "And the Keth fleet?" he asked. "Still positioning themselves," Sanders replied. "They are being careful and trying to maintain stealth. Our scouts count at least 200 warships spread across 3 different staging areas." Lieutenant Commander Ryan Scott's voice came over the communication system from engineering. "Admiral, the sector-wide jamming system is ready to deploy," he said. Once we activate it, the Keth will not be able to communicate beyond visual range for at least 20 minutes. Excellent work, Ryan Blake acknowledged. What is the status of our secret weapon? Sanders allowed herself a slight smile. The weapon satellites are in position, she said. The Keth have no idea we have been seeding this entire sector with hidden weapons platforms for the past month. Blake nodded in satisfaction because humanity had learned from centuries of warfare on Earth. Preparation and intelligence won battles before the first shot was ever fired. While the Keith had been planning their ambush, humanity had been planning an ambush of the ambush. Back on Station Meridian, the formal ceremony was about to begin. Paul adjusted his dress uniform and prepared to meet the Keth High Chancellor. His diplomatic team fell in behind him, and each person carried the same secret. They knew what was coming, and they were ready for it. The Grand Chamber was an impressive sight with transparent walls looking out into space. Seats for observers ringed the upper levels, while the center floor held a simple table where the treaty would be signed. High Chancellor Kreknor entered from the opposite side with his own group of officials. The Keth leader was huge and intimidating, standing nearly 3 meters tall with 4 powerful arms. His body was covered in natural armor plating, and his eyes had multiple facets like an insect. "Captain Henderson," he said through his translator, and his voice boomed across the chamber. "At last we meet to end this unfortunate conflict." High Chancellor Paul replied and bowed slightly in the Keth fashion. "Your willingness to pursue peace honors us both." The polite conversation continued for nearly an hour with speeches about cooperation and mutual respect. The Galactic Council representatives praised both sides for their wisdom in choosing peace. Cameras recorded everything for broadcast across dozens of star systems. And beneath all the diplomatic talk, both sides prepared for violence. Lisa caught a subtle signal from Major Phillips transmitted through a nearly invisible frequency. Ghost Squad was reporting increased Keth military activity throughout the station. They were getting ready to spring their trap. Lisa activated her own hidden communication device and sent a single encoded pulse to the EDS Valiant. The message was simple and clear: imminent. On the Valiant's bridge, Admiral Blake received the alert. "All ships prepare for emergency jump," he ordered. "Weapons hot and shields to maximum power. We go in 60 seconds. The treaty document was presented with great ceremony, and both Paul and Kreknor approached the table. Each held an ornate stylus that would seal the agreement with both physical and digital signatures. Paul met the High Chancellor's gaze and saw the truth there in those alien eyes. Kreknor expected this human to be dead within the hour. The Keth leader probably thought humans were naive fools walking blindly into their doom. Paul signed the treaty with a steady hand, and then Kreknor added his own signature with a flourish. For a moment nothing happened, and the observers applauded politely. The cameras continued recording the historic moment. Then Kreknor made his fatal mistake. He gestured to one of his officers with a subtle movement that was meant to be the signal to seal the station and begin the assault. What happened next happened very quickly. Major Phillips activated the first countermeasure, and throughout Station Meridian blast doors slammed shut. But they did not close where the Keth expected. Instead of trapping the human delegation, the doors sealed off every corridor where Keth troops had gathered. The soldiers found themselves locked in compartments with no way out and no communication with their commanders. Simultaneously, Megan Ross hijacked the station's defense grid and the automated turrets that the Keth throw. The first Keth ship to open fire lasted exactly 4 seconds before it was destroyed. Admiral Kevin Blake had positioned his fleet with perfect mathematical precision, and when the Keth warship powered up its main cannon, 17 human vessels had already locked targeting solutions on it. The combined volley of plasma fire and kinetic penetrators turned the Keth cruiser into expanding debris before it could get off a single shot. "All batteries weapons free," Blake ordered calmly from the bridge of the EDS Valiant. "Target their command. Ships first, because I want their fleet leadership destroyed in the opening salvo." The Valiant's main cannons fired with tremendous force, and the energy beam speared through the void at near light speed. Around the massive flagship, humanity's fleet moved like a pack of wolves, with each ship knowing its role, and each captain executing the plan they had drilled for weeks. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Scott activated the jamming field from the engineering section, and across a sphere of space 50 light-years in diameter. Keith communications suddenly went silent. Ships that had been coordinating their movements were now isolated and unable to call for reinforcements or warn each other of incoming threats. Jamming field at maximum effectiveness, Ryan reported over the communication system. They are deaf and blind out there. Captain Julia Sanders watched her tactical display with fierce satisfaction as the battle unfolded exactly as planned. Keth's second battle group is breaking formation, she reported. They are trying to scatter and escape. Blake's response was immediate and firm. Do not let them, he commanded. Fifth Fleet moved to intercept because I want nothing escaping this sector alive or operational. Inside Station Meridian, chaos had erupted in the Grand Chamber when the trap was sprung. High Chancellor Kreknor bellowed commands in his native language, but his guards found themselves facing prepared human soldiers with activated energy shields and military-grade weapons. The Keth had expected to be doing the ambushing, but instead they were the ones caught by surprise. Captain Paul Henderson stood his ground, and his voice cut through the confusion with authority. Stand down, Chancellor, he said firmly. Your fleet is surrounded and being destroyed as we speak. Order your troops to surrender, or they die here on this station. Kreknor's mandibles clicked rapidly in rage and disbelief. You dare, he shouted. This is neutral ground, and the Galactic Council will condemn you for this violation. Will they? Paul interrupted without any fear in his voice. Will they condemn us for defending ourselves against your ambush? We have recordings of everything, Chancellor. Your troops moving through the station in secret. Your fleet positioning itself for a surprise attack. The treaty was never real, and we both know it. Commander Lisa Freeman had her sidearm trained directly on the Keith leader's center mass. Your move, Chancellor, she said coldly. You can order your people to stand down, or we can paint these walls with your internal organs. I am fine with either option. Throughout the station, Major Claire Phillips and her Ghost Squad were systematically neutralizing Keth forces with brutal efficiency. The element of surprise gave them an overwhelming advantage because the Keth soldiers had been preparing to ambush human diplomats, and instead found themselves trapped in sealed compartments with automated turrets firing at them from multiple angles. Section 7 Secured Sergeant Ben Carter reported over the communication network. 23 Keth soldiers in custody, and no casualties on our side. Claire moved through the corridors with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this type of operation dozens of times before. Copy that, she acknowledged. Megan, what is the status on the station's core systems? Specialist Megan Ross had taken over the main security center, and her fingers flew across holographic controls as she worked. We have full control, she reported with satisfaction in her voice. Life support, gravity, and communications are all under our command. The Keth never had a chance to implement their takeover protocols because we got there first. Claire smiled grimly. Brilliant, she said. Lock down all the docking bays because I do not want any Keth ships leaving until Admiral Blake gives the all-clear signal. Outside the station, the space battle was becoming a complete rout as the carefully planned Keth ambush fell apart. The Keth had planned for a surprise attack against an unsuspecting enemy, but instead they faced a coordinated fleet action by a prepared opponent who had studied their tactics and exploited every weakness. Their formation discipline collapsed as ship after ship was disabled or destroyed. Keth's 7th Squadron is attempting to jump out of the battlespace, Captain Sanders reported. Should we let them go or pursue? Blake considered the tactical situation for only a moment before making his decision. Negative, he said. If they escape, they will report back to Keth High Command and reveal that we can anticipate their strategies. Target their jump engines, and I want them disabled, not destroyed if possible. The Valiant's precision weaponry reached out across thousands of kilometers with surgical accuracy. Carefully aimed strikes disabled the jump drives of the fleeing Keth vessels and stranded them in normal space where they could be captured or destroyed at the fleet's leisure. The Keth commanders found themselves with no options left except surrender or death. Lieutenant Nathan Price, who was commanding the human Marines securing Station Meridian's docking levels, encountered the first serious resistance of the operation. A full company of Keth heavy assault troops had barricaded themselves in docking Bay 12 and were preparing to fight to the death rather than surrender. The problem was that there were civilians in that bay, and Price was not willing to risk innocent lives. We have civilians in that location, one of his sergeants warned. Station workers who got caught in the crossfire when the fighting started. Nathan assessed the situation quickly and made a decision. "Ghost Squad, this is Price," he said over the tactical channel. "I need a surgical strike on Bay 12 because Keth forces have taken hostages." Claire's response came immediately. "On our way," she said. "Give us 3 minutes." Those 3 minutes felt like hours as Nathan and his Marines maintained a perimeter around the bay, while listening to the muffled sounds of the Keth soldiers inside preparing their defenses. But when Ghost Squad arrived, they moved with lethal precision that was beautiful to watch. Megan used her access to the station's systems to override the bay's artificial gravity in a precise pattern that disoriented the Keth soldiers without affecting the hostages. Claire and her team breached from 3 different directions simultaneously, using stun weapons to avoid collateral damage to the civilians. The fight was over in less than 30 seconds. The hostages were safe and the Keth soldiers were secured with restraints. Back in the Grand Chamber, High Chancellor Kreknor finally received the reports he had been dreading through his personal communication device. The messages from what remained of his fleet were fragmented and panicked. The words retreat and disabled and surrender featured prominently in every transmission he received. "It is over," Chancellor Paul said, watching the Keth leader's posture change from aggressive defiance to defeated acceptance. "Your trap failed completely. The question now is how many more of your people have to die before you accept reality and order a full surrender." Kreknor's multifaceted eyes fixed on the human captain with an expression that might have been confusion or respect or both. "How did you know?" the Chancellor asked. "How did you discover our plan?" Lisa answered before Paul could speak. "You were not as clever as you thought," she said. "We studied your history, and every peace treaty you ever signed was a prelude to conquest. We saw the pattern and prepared accordingly. But you came anyway," Kreknor said with genuine confusion in his translated voice. "Why would you walk into a trap if you knew it was there waiting for you?" Paul smiled grimly at the question. "Because we needed you to commit fully to your plan," he explained. "If we had just refused the treaty, you would have attacked somewhere else at a time and place where we might not be ready. But by accepting your invitation and preparing our countermeasures, we turned your trap into our victory." Admiral Blake's voice suddenly came over the station's main speakers, addressing everyone on board. "Attention all Keth personnel," he announced. "Your fleet has been neutralized and Station Meridian is under human control. You have 2 options available to you: surrender peacefully or be destroyed where you stand. You have 5 minutes to decide." The silence that followed was heavy with tension, as everyone waited to see what would happen. Paul kept his weapon trained on Kreknor while waiting for the Chancellor's decision. The fate of thousands of Keth soldiers and crew members hung in the balance. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Kreknor's shoulders sagged in defeat. "I order all Keth forces to stand down and surrender," he said, and his voice carried the heavy weight of failure and shame. Throughout the station and across the battlefield, Keth soldiers and ship crews complied with their leader's command. Weapons were powered down and white flags appeared on display screens. The shooting stopped and an eerie quiet settled over the sector. Blake watched from the Valiant's bridge as the tactical display shifted from red hostile contacts to yellow neutralized targets. "All ships cease fire," he ordered. "Begin recovery operations, and I want every Keth vessel searched and secured." Captain Sanders approached with a preliminary battle report in hand. "Final count," she said. 4. 3 days after the battle station, Meridian looked like an occupied military base, rather than a neutral diplomatic facility. Human Marines patrolled the corridors with loaded weapons, while Keth prisoners were housed in secured sections under constant guard. Repair crews worked around the clock to fix the damage from the brief but intense fighting that had occurred. Captain Paul Henderson sat across from High Chancellor Kreknor in a secure conference room, and the meeting was being recorded by multiple systems to ensure that every word would be preserved for the historical record and the inevitable Galactic Council inquiry. "I want to understand," Paul said, and his tone was more curious than accusatory. "Why did you think this would work? You must have known there was a risk we would discover your plan." Kreknor's mandibles clicked in a gesture that human experts had identified as frustration. "We believed your intelligence capabilities were limited," he admitted. "Most species take decades to develop the kind of strategic thinking you demonstrated. Your civilization has been spacefaring for less than 2 centuries. Commander Lisa Freeman sat beside Paul with her datapad displaying extensive files on Keth military history. "But we have been fighting wars for 10,000 years," she said. Every tactic you tried we have seen before. The false peace offer and the positioning of forces and the attempt to control neutral ground. Humans invented half of those strategies. Kreknor studied the two humans with his multifaceted eyes and seemed to be processing this information. Your species is unusual, he said slowly. Most races we encounter are either purely peaceful or purely aggressive. You seem to be both at the same time. Paul nodded in agreement. That is accurate, he said. Humans value peace, but we are very good at war. It is a contradiction we have learned to live with over our long history. The conversation was interrupted by a priority message from Admiral Blake, and Paul activated the holographic display. The Admiral's image appeared above the conference table, looking concerned. Captain, we have a situation developing, he said. The Keth home fleet is mobilizing, and it appears they are planning a retaliatory strike against human space. Paul exchanged glances with Lisa before responding. Do they understand that we are holding over 5,000 of their personnel, including their High Chancellor? Blake's expression was grim. Apparently that is not a deterrent, he replied. Their military command has declared Kreknor a traitor for surrendering. They are claiming he exceeded his authority, and that the collective does not recognize the terms of his capitulation. Kreknor's reaction was visible even through his alien physiology as his entire body stiffened. They have disavowed me, he said, and a low keening sound emerged from his translator. The Council of Generals has declared me a traitor to the collective. Lisa confirmed this by reading the intercepted Keth transmissions on her datapad. It appears so, she said. They are using your defeat as justification to expand the war. They are calling this the Great Humiliation, and demanding that all Keth worlds mobilize for total war against humanity. Paul leaned back in his chair, processing this new and dangerous development. Admiral, what is the status of our fleet, he asked. We have reinforced the sector, Blake reported. I have 800 warships ready for deployment, and we are recalling more from defensive positions throughout human space. But if the Keth commit their full military might, we are looking at a war of attrition that could last years and cost millions of lives. Kreknor spoke up, and his voice was heavy with emotion. I must speak with the Council of Generals, he said. This is madness, and the collective cannot win a full-scale war against humanity. Your tactical capabilities are too advanced, and your strategic thinking is too sophisticated. They are not interested in listening, Lisa said, while reviewing the intercepted communications. The messages show that the generals are more concerned with saving face than with military reality. They believe that the size of their empire will eventually overwhelm human forces. Paul made a quick decision. Admiral, relay this message to the Keth home fleet, he said. We will release High Chancellor Kreknor and all prisoners, but only after the collective agrees to genuine peace negotiations, one that includes verification protocols and mutual transparency measures. Make it clear that this is a one-time offer with no room for negotiation. Blake nodded from the holographic display. I will send it immediately, he said. But Paul, you should know that Director Price has authorized me to implement Operation Final Warning if the Keth refuse to negotiate. Paul's expression hardened because he knew exactly what Final Warning entailed, and it was not something he wanted to see happen. Let us hope it does not come to that, he said quietly. Across the galaxy, the Keth collective was in complete turmoil. The Council of Generals met in their war chamber on the capital world of Keth Prime, and the debate was heated with voices raised in anger. General Thaknor, who was the eldest member of the council, argued for caution. We underestimated them once, he said. Why would we make the same mistake twice? The humans demonstrated strategic capabilities that exceed our own, but he was shouted down by younger and more aggressive generals who saw the defeat at station. Meridian as an insult that demanded vengeance at any cost. We outnumber them 10-1, roared General Vecnar. Our empire spans 300 worlds and they have barely 50 colonies. Numbers will prevail in the end. The debate raged for hours as different factions argued their positions, but eventually a decision was made. The Keth collective would mobilize for total war, and every available warship would be committed to crushing humanity once and for all. The response to Admiral Blake's offer was curt and dismissive. The Keth collective does not negotiate with inferior species, the message read. Return our personnel if you wish to show mercy. Otherwise they are already dead to us and we will not bargain for their lives. When Blake received this response, he forwarded it immediately to Earth's Strategic Command, and within minutes he received authorization from Director Helen Price and President Andrew. Cross Admiral Blake, the President's recorded message stated. You are hereby authorized to implement Operation Final Warning. Show the Keth Collective the full extent of humanity's capabilities. Make it clear that any further aggression will result in consequences they cannot imagine or survive. Blake stood on the bridge of the EDS Valiant and gave the orders he had hoped he would never have to give. All ships prepare for deep strike operations, he announced. We are taking the war directly to Keth Prime. Captain Julia Sanders pulled up the tactical plans that had been prepared for this exact contingency. Sir, are we really going to do this? She asked. Strike at their homeworld. Blake shook his head. Not their homeworld, he clarified. Their military infrastructure only. We are going to show them what humanity can do when we stop holding back and remove all restraints. The plan was audacious and would have been considered impossible by most galactic militaries. Human ships would jump directly into Keth space, bypassing all their defensive perimeters. They would target military shipyards and weapons production facilities and strategic command centers. They would do it all within a 6-hour window, and then jump out before the Keth could mount an effective response. It was the kind of operation that required perfect coordination and flawless intelligence and technological advantages that the Keth did not know humanity possessed. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Scott worked with his engineering teams to prepare the fleet's jump drives for precision, targeting that had never been attempted before. We will need to jump within 1,000 kilometers of each target, he explained to his nervous team. That is far more accurate than standard military jumps. If we are off by even a fraction of a percent, we could materialize inside a planet or scattered across light years of space. His lead engineer officer Danny Walsh looked at the calculations with obvious concern. Sir, these tolerances are insane, he said. No one attempts jumps this precise because the risk is too high. Ryan replied calmly. That is exactly why it will work. The Keth think it is impossible, so they will not defend against it, and we will catch them completely unprepared. Back on Station Meridian, Paul received notification of Operation Final Warning, and he looked at Kreknor, who had been monitoring the same military channels. Your leaders have made a terrible mistake, Paul said quietly. We gave them an opportunity to end this peacefully. They chose escalation instead, and now they will face the consequences. Kreknor seemed to have aged considerably in the past few days. What will you do? He asked with resignation in his voice. Paul's answer was direct and honest. We are going to demonstrate why it is a bad idea to threaten humanity, he said. Your military infrastructure is about to be dismantled. Not destroyed completely because we are not monsters, but damaged severely enough that your generals will understand the futility of continuing this war. You are going to strike Keth Prime, Kreknor asked, and his voice held a mixture of disbelief and horror. Paul shook his head. No, he said. We are going to strike 73 military targets across 40 Keth worlds simultaneously. Your shipyards and your weapons facilities and your command centers. We are going to do it all in one coordinated operation, and then we are going to leave before your fleets can respond. And we are going to do it without causing civilian casualties because, unlike your military, we actually care about proportional response and the laws of. 6 months after the Battle of Station Meridian, Captain Paul Henderson stood in the newly constructed Peace Hall on Luna, which was humanity's moon. The building had been designed specifically to host ongoing negotiations with the Keth Collective and other galactic powers. Its architecture blended human aesthetics with Keth design principles and served as a visible symbol of the cooperation that was slowly taking shape between the former enemies. Admiral Kevin Blake stood beside Paul, looking out through the massive transparent dome at Earth, rising above the lunar horizon. Strange how things work out, Blake commented. We prepared for war and ended up creating peace instead. Paul shook his head slightly. We prepared for war so effectively that peace became the only logical choice, he corrected. The Keth are not cooperating out of the goodness of their hearts. They are cooperating because they understand what will happen if they do not. Commander Lisa Freeman approached with a status report in her hands. The latest cultural exchange delegation has arrived from Keth Prime, she said. 23 Keth scholars and artists and engineers. They will be touring Earth's universities and industrial centers for the next month. Paul nodded and asked about their own delegation. 37 humans, she replied, including some of our best experts in alien cultures and diplomacy. Major Phillips is leading the security detail just to be safe. Paul smiled at that because after her performance during the crisis, Claire Phillips had become something of a legend. The Keth called her the Ghost Commander and treated her with a mixture of fear and respect that was unusual for them. The peace treaty that had been signed 3 months earlier was unlike anything the Galactic Council had seen before in their long history. Instead of vague promises of cooperation, it included specific and enforceable provisions with real consequences for violations. Military observers from both sides monitored each other's naval movements and reported back to joint oversight committees. Trade agreements were tied directly to compliance with transparency requirements. Cultural exchanges were mandatory and not optional as they were in most treaties. Most importantly, the treaty included a mutual defense clause that stated if either humanity or the Keth Collective was attacked by a third party, the other would come to their aid with military force. What had started as enemies trying to destroy each other had evolved into reluctant allies bound by practical necessity and mutual interest. High Chancellor Kreknor, who had been reinstated to his position after the peace was established, arrived for the meeting with his usual entourage. The former enemies greeted each other with the formal respect that had replaced their previous hostility and murderous intent. Captain Henderson and Admiral Blake Kreknor said through his translator device, "I bring news from the Council of Generals. Our intelligence services have detected unusual activity in the Varn sector that borders both our territories." Paul's expression became serious immediately. "What kind of activity?" he asked. "Unknown vessels using stealth technology more advanced than either of our civilizations possesses," Kreknor explained. "They have been probing our defenses for the past month." He activated a holographic display showing the sensor readings, and the data looked concerning. "We believe a new power is emerging in that region, and they may be preparing for expansion into our territories." Blake studied the data with his practiced tactical eyes. "These readings are sophisticated," he said. "Whoever they are not primitive raiders or pirates." Kreknor nodded in agreement. "Which is why I propose we conduct a joint reconnaissance mission," he said. "A combined human and Keth task force to investigate these incursions. It would be the first true test of our alliance." Lisa looked at Paul questioningly because this was a significant step forward. Joint military operations required a level of trust that had only begun to develop between their species. Paul made the decision quickly without hesitation. "Agreed," he said. "We will assemble a task force. Admiral Blake will command the human contingent. Who will lead the Keth forces?" "General Thaknor has volunteered," Kreknor replied. "He believes that practical cooperation in the field will strengthen our alliance faster than any diplomatic protocol or signed document." Over the next 2 weeks, an unprecedented military force took shape in neutral space. 15 human warships and 15 Keth vessels assembled together, and their crews underwent intensive training to work as a cohesive unit. They learned each other's tactical protocols and communication systems, and began to understand how the other side thought about combat. General Thaknor proved to be an excellent choice for the mission. The elderly Keth officer had spent his career studying other species' military doctrines, and he treated human tactics with genuine respect and intellectual curiosity. His counterpart, Admiral Blake, returned that respect in full measure, and the two commanders developed a working relationship built on mutual professionalism. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Scott worked closely with Keth engineers to integrate their sensor systems with human technology. "It is fascinating," he told his team. "Their approach to power distribution is completely different from ours, but equally effective. We might be able to learn from each other and create something better than either of us has a lone specialist." Megan Ross, who had been assigned to the mission as a communications expert, found herself working alongside Keth technical officers every day. "They are not so different from us," she reported to Major Phillips. "They value efficiency and clear communication and getting the job done, just like human military personnel do." Claire Phillips had her Ghost Squad training alongside Keth Special Forces units in joint exercises. The first sessions were awkward, with both sides unsure how to coordinate their very different movements and tactics. But by the end of the first week, they were operating as a cohesive unit that was more effective than either group alone. "They are good," Claire admitted to Sergeant Ben Carter. "Different tactics than ours, but effective. And they are fast learners who adapt quickly." The joint task force jumped into the Varn sector with careful coordination and precise timing. The human ships took point with their advanced sensor suites, scanning for the mysterious vessels. The Keth ships formed a defensive perimeter around them, with their heavier armor and shields providing protection for the more lightly built human vessels. It was a formation that played to the strengths of both fleets. Within hours, they found what they were looking for, and it was more dangerous than anyone had expected. The unknown ships were massive and easily 3 times the size of the largest human or Keth vessels. Their hull design was unlike anything in the known galaxy, with curves and angles that suggested a completely different approach to spacecraft engineering and physics. Attempting to hail reported the communications officer on Blake's flagship. No response from the vessels. They are scanning us, and now they are powering up weapons. The first shot came without warning, and it was a beam of concentrated energy that would have destroyed a standard warship in a single hit. But the combined formation was ready for trouble. The Keth cruiser that took the hit had reinforced shields, and the beam dissipated across its defensive grid without penetrating. All ships return fire, Blake ordered immediately. Keth vessels provide covering fire, while human ships flank them and target their weapon systems. The battle that followed was a testament to how much the former enemies had learned to work together in just 2 weeks. Human ships, with their superior speed and maneuverability, darted around the massive unknown vessels like insects, striking at weapons emplacements and propulsion systems. Keth ships anchored the formation with their devastating main cannons punching through armor that would have resisted human weapons completely. General Thaknor's tactical commands complemented Blake's strategy perfectly. The 2 commanders communicated in real time, adjusting the battle plan on the fly as the situation developed and changed. Unknown vessels are attempting to jump away, reported Captain Julia Sanders. Should we pursue them into unknown space? Blake made a quick tactical decision. Negative, he said. Let them go. We have gathered enough intelligence for now. Pursuing into unknown space would be too risky with limited forces. As the mysterious ships vanished into jump space, the combined task force regrouped to assess damage and casualties. The battle had lasted only 7 minutes, but it had been intense. 2 human ships had taken moderate damage, and 1 Keth cruiser needed significant repairs. But there had been no casualties on either side, which was remarkable. Analysis complete, Ryan reported from engineering. Those ships use technology that is at least 2 generations ahead of anything we have encountered. Their energy weapons operate on principles we do not fully understand yet. Thaknor reviewed the same data from the Keth perspective. Their armor composition is also unknown, he said. Our most powerful shots barely penetrated their hull plating. Blake and Thaknor conferred privately via holographic link after the battle. We have a problem, Blake said. If this new power decides to expand into our space, neither humanity nor the Keth collective could stop them alone. Thaknor considered this carefully, but together, he suggested, today we demonstrated that our forces can work effectively as a single unit. Human speed and precision combined with Keth firepower and endurance. It is a formidable combination that might stand a chance, agreed, Blake said. I will recommend to Earth's govern